to privacy. But that has been completely changed. Police, internationally, federal government. Here has been very much involved with the Trump administration. I think this is an issue that I think very important for us because we need to expose that this is what's going on. I like a lot of the things that Trump has done, but we need to be very much aware of some of the things that are happening kind of behind the scenes. And so this is very important. Now, I'm going to have a hard time reading some of this, so I hope you'll bear with me. In 2002, the U.S. government created the Total Information Awareness to track every aspect of Americans. It was defunded in 2003, but what happened was that this whole project was picked up by Palantir's Gotham, and then it was helped to be funded by the CIA. So this total is almost identical. Can you imagine that happening? I mean, it's just such out there that it would actually happen, that it was almost identical to what the government had originally organized. But there was so much backlash that they didn't do it. So Palantir is building products that, I'll go on from there. So they went on to say that Palantir engineers are embedded in almost every government agency that we have. And why? Because they're the only ones that know how to run the software and everything else that Palantir has created to track all of us. Okay? So the Privacy Act of 1974 was specifically created to prevent this cross-sharing of all of this information. But through using a private company that's paid for by your tax dollars, they've been able to circumvent this, and that's what they're doing right now. For instance, the U.S. Army consolidated nearly 75 contracts to consolidated them, and these are worth $10 billion, and Palantir has all those contracts. So we can see what's happening. They're not restricted by anything the government has said that they're not going to do. They're completely free as an individual company to do whatever they want. So this is an important part of what's going to happen under the Genius Act. One thing I'll mention here is that when they talk about the Treasury Department, the U.S. Treasury Department, contracted with Palantir to further help with the new system that they're putting in. And I'm going to talk to you about the Genius Act and the stablecoin. Palantir, of course, is everyone's data that can be leveraged against us, and that's how the government builds Know Your Customer. That has to do with the banks and money laundering laws. So I wrote my most recent newsletter, and I have copies of those, and I'll put them out on one of the tables. My most recent newsletter that I do through Nevada Families for Freedom on the Genius Act. And the name of it is Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins. And this was signed on July 18th. So this has passed Congress already, the Genius Act. You need to be aware of it. And what it does is create a framework for the U.S. dollar-backed, and of course we know that's Federal Reserve dollars, Federal Reserve-backed payment in stable coins. President Trump, when he signed the Genius Act, he said on the way to the Senate, this is going to make America the undisputed digital assets, and nobody will do it better. Nobody will do digital assets better than the U.S. Trump, in the ceremony, said, just as I promised, the Genius Act
creates a clear and simple regulatory framework, that's very key, to establish and unleash the immense promise of dollar-backed, Federal Reserve dollar-backed stablecoin. And this could perhaps be the greatest revolution in financial technology since the birth of internet itself. So what they've done with stablecoin, this is the new like Bitcoin, but it's an official one created in the Genius Act. Stablecoin is a digital asset like Bitcoin. They've created this, and then what they've done is they are promulgating all of the regulations through the U.S. Treasury, and guess who else? The Federal Reserve, which is, of course, a private bank. And so 18 months after the Genius Act is passed, and they will begin, they will get these regulations in line, and then what they will do is that they will allow private companies, the federal government is not going to issue these. They will have private third-party contracted companies to issue stablecoin. So that's very important. And why is that important?
Is that 18 months from July?
Yes, I believe that's 18 months that they will do that. And they will be issuing the regulations for stablecoin 18 months after it passed in July. So what does this mean? Because third parties will be issuing the stablecoin, they are not restricted by the federal government. And I want to just read this whole part. I don't know if you're familiar with, let's see, where is it? Oh, I want to read this from Marjorie Taylor Greene. You've probably seen her on television. She's a U.S. Representative. And she's, I love her. Anyway, this is what she said about, then they tried to pass this bill, H.R. 1919, the Anti-CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency Surveillance Act. And it was passed in Congress by a narrow margin of 219 to 210. And this is what Marjorie Greene said about this, okay? She said regarding this bill, the number one thing that is not happening today is a ban on central bank digital currency. This means the ability of the government to take control of your digital bank account, where all of your money will be, and turn it off. This is why I am so upset, and it is not being talked about. Greene said that the CBDC will in all likelihood get stripped out of the Senate bill banning the central bank digital currency. And she pointed out that these bills are designed to switch Americans over from cash to programmable tokens. Now, what are programmable tokens? That's stablecoin. That's what that is. It's a digital currency, but it's not a central bank digital currency because the Fed isn't issuing it. Who's issuing it? Private companies are doing it. So that is what is happening with that. And I think it's very important that we are aware that this is happening. We heard information earlier today about the problems with this. Essentially, this ends any amount of freedom and privacy. And why? Because they can use it to implement things like what? Social credit scores. And that's what, but now instead of the government doing it like they do in China, they're going to have private companies doing it, and they can determine those things. And so we don't have anything to say about it. So what I want, and Trump also passed 2 executive orders that overhaul the Treasury Department, eliminating cash and check payments. That was happened through an executive order, and only now can they take digital payments through there. Now, I don't know if you know Gregory Mannarino, but I like to watch his podcast that he does. And he argues, I just want to read this because I think it really exploits what it is, argues that stable coins are even worse than ordinary central bank digital currencies. The illusion of choice, that's what it provides. Stablecoin provides the illusion of choice. These corporate stablecoins masquerade as free market innovation, giving the illusion that they are using decentralized private alternative to government money. But behind the curtain is the Fed and the U.S. Treasury, but still pulling the strings. Number 2, no congressional accountability. A federal central bank digital currency would have required the congressional approval, and it would have sparked massive public debate. But corporate issued stablecoins can be rolled out without public oversight. So they've gone out of the Congress and they're doing this off-site in private companies. Built-in surveillance by proxy. When private firms issue money as stablecoins, but the Fed regulates the flow, the government gains full surveillance ability without ever appearing on your banking app. The Fed watches from behind the veil with no fingerprints. Number 4, programmability and blacklisting. These stablecoins can be programmed like a central bank digital currency, transactions denied on the basis of social scores, location, spending habits, wallets frozen for security reasons. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. We all remember when the Patriot Act was passed. Do we remember that after 9/11? Well, and we opposed it. And in Nevada, we had a bill to provide the same definition of the Patriot Act that was in the federal bill as in our state in Nevada. That would have done the same thing. And what it did essentially is strip away your rights as an American citizen to any constitutional protections, that they could take you into jail accusing you as a terrorist, or you would lose the right to habeas corpus and any other rights that would be protecting you. So when we opposed this, when I got up in the legislature to oppose it, it was very interesting. The former Speaker of the Assembly was the lobbyist for them, and I got up to oppose it. And I talked about how the definition under this particular bill would mean that Janine was a terrorist. Because if you oppose the government and what they're doing in their policy, you could be accused of being a terrorist. So in the newspaper the next day, when they had newspapers, there was a big picture of Janine with her American flag on, and it said, Janine, the terrorist. So that's what was in there. Now, so when we see all of these things that have been put in place over the years, we can anticipate that we will become the enemies of the federal government. Now, what happened with that is very interesting. The ACLU and other organizations got up and supported me in what I had opposed. It was a very interesting coalition. I'm going to talk about coalitions this afternoon, but that is a great one because when you have constitutionalists and the left on the same issue, you have great success. And we stopped that definition from being put into our law. But these things will tend to override it. So let me go on with this. Corporate profiteering and state tyranny, a Babylon hybrid beast. This is the unholy alliance, Gregory Mannarino says. Tech giants and the central banking system merging into one. The corporations profit from adoption. The Fed enforces compliance. The people locked in digital servitude. This is Trump's, number 6, Trump's Trojan horse. Trump publicly rejects central bank digital currency, but supports corporate stable coins regulated by the Fed. It's just a sleight of hand. Right. It's not central bank digital currency, but it's worse. It's the same thing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Catherine Austin Fitts. She worked under the first Bush administration in the Department of Housing. She has wonderful things on her Solari report, and I followed her for a long time, and she's absolutely amazing. She was the Assistant Secretary of Housing. They actually got rid of her, and she had to fight for her life. They took all of her money because she was exposing the corruption that was going on in the housing department. And so I've long admired her. She says the tokenization of assets being ushered in and what it would mean for freedom for people around the world, the guys from the New York Fed are going to create subsidiaries and issue stable coins which will be interoperable and can work with the social credit system. So what happens with all of this? I remember reading the book, The Greatest, I can't even think of it now, I'm sorry. Okay, it's about building of the railroad across the United States, the transcontinental railroad across the United States. And what the people that were in charge of this did is they created subsidiaries so the subsidiaries could make all the money in building it, and they were up here on the top. This is what's going to happen. They're going to build their own subsidiaries so they're still in control and still making the money. And I'll just read you this. This is what Marjorie Taylor Greene shared. And you all know about this. It's from Revelation 13:16 through 18. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark, and the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that understandeth count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. I want to tell you what's happened in the United Kingdom. Okay, I just explained what the Genius Act does, and stablecoin. It implements that. In the United Kingdom, they are making digital IDs mandatory. As of September 26, 2025, the Prime Minister has announced that a new digital ID that will be mandatory for any UK citizen to be able to have a job, to work. It's mandatory. The digital ID will be held on a smartphone in your hand, a smartphone, and will be compulsory component of your right to work. Checks performed by employees, though it may not be traditional physical ID card, must be carried daily. So this is it's not only happening in the United States, but this is a little farther than we've gone in the United States. What happened, according to Martin Armstrong after that, is they started a digital petition online to oppose this. And in 48 hours, they had a petition with over 2 million people opposing it. What we have to do is, so most of you didn't raise your hand that you didn't know what the Genius Act was. You need to become aware of it, and we need to share that information, because unless we know, we cannot oppose it. We cannot expose what's going on. It's absolutely critical that we do that. I'm just going to share a few more things, and then I'll give you some ideas about what we can do to oppose it. Tokenization, that's putting them in stablecoin, of assets involves the process of digitally representing real physical assets on distributed ledgers, or issuing traditional asset classes as tokenization within the context of blockchain technology. That's the technology they use for things like Bitcoin. That's what they'll use for stablecoin, blockchain technology. Tokenization is the process of converting something of value, into a digital token that is usable on blockchain application. A token represents a share of ownership on the underlying asset. Okay, what kind of things are tangible assets? Gold, real estate, debt, bonds, certain forms of tangible assets such as ownership right of certain licensing. They can digitalize or tokenize anything we have. Moreover, they now have 100, and you might want to look this up, 166-page report published by the White House called Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Finance Technology. Thank you. Sorry. I ate all kinds of things I shouldn't have at the dinner last night. That chocolate was good. Okay, I'll read it. Strengthening American leadership in digital finance technology. It's supposed to be on was published by the White House. It's 166 pages. The paper describes a path to tokenize the financial system in the U.S. and abroad, shifting from fiat currency. Of course, what's fiat currency? The Federal Reserve note that you have in your pocket, to money-like, in their words, digital dollars, the form of stablecoin tokens, representing real-world assets as digital tokens in blockchain. Now, one of the reasons, some of the articles I've read, that they're trying to do this is because what do we know that's happening with the US dollar? As we see the price of gold going up and up, we know that the real price of gold is not going up, but the price, the buying power of the dollar is going down, 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 down.
Dollar's just as good as the Federal Reserve.
Excuse me. The Federal Reserve notes are going down, down, down. Have you ever gone to the store and asked somebody if they accept Federal Reserve notes? What? And then you hand them one? A lot of fun. So Federal Reserve notes are going down, down, down. Because they've printed massive numbers of Federal Reserve notes. And what's happening with the BRICS nations, I hope you know what that is, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and they've joined a lot of other companies, a lot of nations to them. They are organizing an alternative to the U.S. petrodollar. So as this continues to expand, more dollars will flow back to the United States as people realize they're backed by nothing, and they never have been. And so the value of the Federal Reserve notes will continue to drop. That's why gold and silver are going up. So what they're trying to do with this is to get a system in place that they can move from the Federal Reserve note in your pocket to the digital Federal Reserve note in your bank account, which they can control through social credit scores. So that's what they have in their plan. Austin Carstens, the now former general manager of the Bank of International Settlements. Now, what is that? That's the central bank of all central banks. That's the international one, central bank, the Bank of International Settlements. What? Okay, stepped down in June of this year, but I want to read you what he said. We don't know who's using the $100 bill today, and we don't know who's using the $1,000 peso. The key difference with the central bank digital currency, or in the United States, stablecoin, is the central bank will have absolute control on the rules, regulations that will determine the use and expression of central bank liability, and we will have the technology to control and enforce that. That's what they're planning. Total control over all of our assets. What can we do? One of the things we can do is spend more Federal Reserve notes. Instead of using your credit card, use Federal Reserve notes. Encourage the cash system. And you need to prepare yourself. There are a lot of ways. I'm not a financial advisor, and I don't advise people what to do financially, but it might be wise to have some of those real dollars we talked about today, or things like silver eagles and gold eagles. That would be useful. It might also be very wise for you. I'm a preparedness expert and done a lot of classes on that, for you to prepare personally so that when something like this happens, you don't have to go to the store and use your central bank digital currency. I don't know the answer. I know the Lord has an answer, and I would encourage all of you to pray about what you should do personally. But the main thing we need to do is let people know that this is coming. And in those ways, just like's happening in opposition in Britain right now to what they're doing to them, as we know, we can get together, and I'm going to talk about that this afternoon, how we can make a difference and change things in our own community. So we need to be aware so that we can tell others. And we need to trust in the Lord. And you know what? know this is coming, and we can do all we can to stop it. And I encourage you to do that. And I believe that as we trust in the Lord, we will have answers in our personal life and in our community and in the party about what we can do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Janine. We got a lot of issues coming at us very quickly, and it's very important to have folks digging into them so that we have this information that we can deal with them. Our next speaker, Kat, I want to make sure I pronounce the last name correctly. Is it Sink?
Yes.
Okay. Kat Sink is the director of Nevada chapter of Stand for Health Freedom and has been volunteering her time advocating and lobbying for children's health, medical freedom, and parental right issues in Oregon and Nevada since 2019. You can look up her website at standforhealthfreedom.com. And Kat, if you'll come speak to us today.
Thank you. Oh, let me grab my water bottle just in case.
I just interrupt. I have some copies of my newsletter I wrote on this available here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I've been told I have 30 minutes. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. I don't intend to overwhelm or alarm anybody. I just want to make everybody aware of a lot of different areas where your rights are being infringed upon in the pharmaceutical, chemical, and digital world that we live in. First of all, I think he covered the introduction pretty well. I had a whole paragraph on that, so we'll just skip that. I have been involved in what is called the medical freedom movement now since about 2015, mainly here in Nevada, but with a few years in Oregon when my family and I lived there. My daughter, who was born in 2013, was having some severe medical issues following her routine childhood shots, which led me to dig deep into researching vaccines, and I read everything that I could get my hands on. It ultimately led me to decide never to vaccinate again. That applies to myself, my family, my pets. We're done. Within the same time frame, I noticed what could only have been highly coordinated attacks on our rights to decline that particular intervention. They were all trying to pass, I say they all, there were a lot of states trying to pass laws requiring 100% compliance with vaccine uptake. It started with the childhood school vaccine mandates, and then as we all saw in 2021 with the COVID vaccine mandates for the rest of us. I imagine that many of you, if not most of you, had never heard of or even considered the term medical freedom prior to the COVID years. And prior to those vaccine mandates. In fact, I presented at a local conservative group meeting back in 2020, whose members opposed the shutdowns and the mask mandates at the time. After our talk, the local sheriff engaged myself and another anti-vax mom after our short talk, and he was confused about the term medical freedom. He thought it meant the right to use a drug, the right to take a vaccine, the right to have it. He had never considered before the alternative, and I suspect many of you hadn't either. COVID vaccine mandates came just after that talk, and it seems that most everyone now knows what the term medical freedom means as a result. As I mentioned, our movement began in earnest in 2015 as a response to attempts by the pharmaceutical industry to require uptake by all school children of the liability-free vaccine products and to eliminate all exemptions. Think about that. They were trying to get every child age 0 to 18 to buy their product and have the parents have them injected into their bodies. California passed SB 277, and this was actually when it first came on my radar in 2015. It ended the right to exempt any child from the 72 vaccines on the CDC recommended schedule for religious or personal beliefs in California. Shortly after, in 2017, they passed SB 276, and that eliminated medical exemptions too. Meaning, if a child had a severe reaction after a shot, they would still be required to take the rest of the 72 shots in order to go to daycare or to school. Between 2016 and 2019, a lot of other states, such as Oregon, Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey, also had the identical bills, literally word for word. The bills were the same in the different states. In Oregon, where we were living at the time, thankfully we fought off AB 3063 with the help of our Republican legislators, who were in a super minority up there. They took that vaccine bill and paired it with a 2A bill and with a cap and trade bill and stood their ground on it. And you may remember they walked out, denied quorum to the Democrat majority, and basically forced the Democrats to drop those bills before they came back. During those years, moms and dads came out of the woodworks across the country to fight the bills, and this modern movement was born. You see, most of the parents that showed up those years knew firsthand the injuries and had seen deaths immediately following vaccination. We weren't anti-vaxxers. We had vaccinated our kids, and our kids were harmed, so we felt obligated to warn others. We had learned the hard way, and at the time, we also saw the writing on the wall, and we knew that they were just coming after kids first, and that they were going to come after the rest of us with this forced medication. Back in 2018, I read on the United Nations and on the World Health Organization websites their plans to vaccinate every single human on the planet. They were already planning global vaccination and vaccine passports when I read about it in 2018. So when COVID hit, it wasn't new. They had the plan. Little did any of us know at the time that the day was right around the corner, though. During a meeting of a bunch of different medical freedom groups, and it was a Zoom meeting, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., this was still real early in the pandemic, April of 2020, said that he knew that the day was coming, but he had never imagined it would come so quickly that he would still be alive to see it. And in the same meeting, he vowed to die with his boots on fighting against medical tyranny. And that goes for the rest of us activists that fight for our kids and our futures in this realm. I'd like to move on and introduce you to two really important concepts that you may or may not have heard before, bodily autonomy and informed consent. Bodily autonomy is the fundamental right to govern your own body, make decisions about your health and your future, and control what happens to your body without coercion, violence, or external interference. It's your God-given right to control for yourself what happens to your body, and it's not granted by the government or by any other non-divine entity. Only you, or parents in the case of minor children, get to decide what happens to your body. The doctrine of informed consent is a legal and ethical principle that's been widely codified, for example, the Nuremberg Code, in both national and international law. Informed consent is the free consent to medical or scientific experimentation upon you. It requires healthcare providers to ensure that patients are fully informed about proposed medical procedures and treatments before agreeing to them. It requires subjects of scientific experimentation to understand the risks and the benefits, and it requires their express consent to that intervention. Informed consent legally and morally protects your God-given right to bodily autonomy. So bodily autonomy and informed consent can certainly get in the way of scientific progress and corporate profits, as we've all seen. The pharmaceutical and chemical industries have been rigging the game in their favor for a lot of years. They lobby for laws that guarantee or require the use of their products or that publicly fund their companies. They routinely hide negative information about their products so that their sales and their bottom lines are not affected. The pharmaceutical industry has become the largest advertiser of mainstream media, or on mainstream media, for the mainstream media companies. And this wasn't done to sell their products to you. the consumer, but rather to gain control of the media. Do you think that a media outlet who relies on that massive revenue stream from the advertising dollars is going to report something negative about the same company that's paying their bills? Censorship is real, and they're hiding pertinent information from all of us. Even the medical journals are supposed to be unbiased, but they have financial ties to the industries too. The companies have gained undue influence over the government with massive lobbying budgets. We have government agencies that are supposed to be the watchdog, but instead they're more like partners to the industry. Politicians are mindlessly repeating marketing slogans like safe and effective. In fact, Pritzker was just doing it this week. With all of the trickery, your rights to bodily autonomy and informed consent are absolutely under threat and have been for a long time. When information is concealed, or negative information in particular, is concealed, you're being deprived of your right to informed consent. An area where a lot of states are seeing law changes recently, including here in Nevada, is minor consent. Children under the age of 18 can now legally consent to health care. The laws make it easier for the pharmaceutical industry to get their products into bodies. Now kids can consent to certain types of health care, including reproductive and mental health care, that all include drugs, medical surgery, devices, surgeries, vaccines without their parents' consent or even their knowledge. Kids can consent for themselves. Parents can consult on behalf of kids, but neither the child or the parent can refuse the treatment if the other one consents. So the laws have been set up so that the default is in the direction of the intervention, if that makes sense to you guys. They've made it easier to get a yes than to get a no, and when they get a yes, they get paid. I'm going to go over some areas, give you some examples of areas where informed consent is lacking, and I, again, don't mean to scare you. I'm not trying to alarm you all. I just want you to understand how many different areas in today's world are being affected by a lack of informed consent. The good news is that the current administration seems to be moving in a positive direction with a lot of recent policy changes that aim to preserve informed consent. Vaccines. Vaccines come with a very real risk of injury or death. They're made to provoke an immune response, and they absolutely interfere with your body's own natural immune defense. They contain toxic ingredients, and there have never been any proper safety studies done using an inert placebo. The clinical trials are done by the pharmaceutical companies themselves, and when they compare a new vaccine with what they call a placebo, that placebo is either another vaccine or it's the exact same vaccine that they're trialing with one less ingredient. They'll take the antigen out, which is the active pathogen, and that placebo that then they're then comparing the active vaccine against still has the exact same polysorbate 80 aluminum, fetal cell tissue, animal tissues in it that the other one does. You can't determine safety that way. And then the vaccine manufacturers are actually legally exempt from liability for any of the harms that their products do cause. For most medical and pharmaceutical interventions in general, the risks tend to be minimized when they're being presented to a patient. We see time and time again drugs and medical devices that are pulled from the market years after they've been used by the general public. It's important that you read the fine print before agreeing to anything, know the benefits, learn the risks. It's not always easy to get true information, but it can be found. There are lots of tricks being used by the pharmaceutical industry to get people to accept these drugs. Learn the tricks. For example, blood pressure medications. In just 2024, the threshold for high blood pressure was lowered from 140 to 120. The low blood pressure threshold was raised from 80 to 90. So now we have 30 points less within a normal blood pressure range. For Anybody outside of the normal blood pressure range, they're told by the experts at the pharma-funded American Heart Association, who set the guidelines for your doctors, that they need medication for their blood pressure. Statins, bone density drugs, the list goes on. Read the prescribing information and a medication guide before starting a new medication. Now let's take a look at some other areas where we often see pharmaceutical interventions that generate a lot of revenue for the companies that make the products. Lots of forever drugs, where the goal isn't to resolve the issue, but rather to medicate you forever. Is informed consent being minimized in order for them to make money off of you? Absolutely. Mental health care. Not to minimize the fact that some people do suffer psychological issues and mental illness and do greatly benefit from using the medications. But the pharmaceutical industry has done a fantastic job of medicalizing the human condition. There's a diagnosis for literally every human emotion that exists and a drug to go along with it. 1 in 4 American adults is on psychiatric medication today, and nearly 1 in 10 kids is on. It is the number of kindergartners on these psych meds is terrifying. They are 4 and 5 years old and they're already being prescribed these drugs. There's no exit strategy for most, if not all, of those drugs. They're not easy to get off of, and they do have serious side effects. Make sure you know what you're getting into before you consent. Gender treatment is expensive, and once a person transitions, they have to stay on those drugs for life. You can't just stop taking the hormones and the drugs. The surgeries are expensive, the follow-up medical care is expensive, the long-term effects on overall health are not known, and the consequences for using these life-altering drugs and having the surgeries is also not known. And once you start down that path, you can't go back. You can never go back. Do you think a 16-year-old can understand the permanence of what they're getting into? Reproductive health care, from birth control drugs to the abortion pill and surgical abortion, as well as a supposed HIV prevention drug treatment called PrEP, none of these is without risk. And the primary target demographic for all of those is teenage kids. Which leads me to another topic that I've got to mention, school-based health clinics. They've passed all these bills to allow minors to consent to certain health care without their parents' approval or awareness. Where do they have access to the kids? At school. So here they can see a child away from their parents and convince them that they're old enough and mature enough to make their own healthcare decisions. They're doing mental health care, reproductive care, and gender care in these school-based health clinics, and they're all treated with the same pharmaceutical drugs that I already touched on, and the surgeries, the medical devices, the vaccines. Are kids fully mature enough to understand and evaluate the potential risks versus the benefits? Do they understand the long-term ramifications? The next two are a couple of other treatment areas that you may or may not have ever thought about. Obesity drugs, the latest craze, getting people to take these diabetes medications at far higher doses than a diabetes patient would take them. Is another example where most people are not being fully informed by the prescriber of the potential negative side effects. They're tapping into people's vanity and desperation, and they're not being prescribed as a temporary fix. These are forever drugs. They want this person to be on them forever. Medically assisted treatment. Here's one I just learned about last year. Has anyone ever heard of MAT? One person in the room. It's where they use FDA-approved drugs to treat addiction to illegal drugs. So think methadone for opioid addictions. They tell the patients that they need to take this drug forever or they'll relapse. So another forever drug. Moving on to environmental hazards, which include chemicals that we're exposed to, as well as technologies. I'm going to start with 5G and wireless radiation. We know that the studies have not been done to determine the long-term effects and permanent effects of EMF radiation on humans or on any sort of life form. Yet the technology is everywhere. We're all exposed to it every single day. Even if you decide to avoid and minimize those EMFs in your home, you can't avoid it the minute you step outside. It's everywhere. Did we all consent to being test subjects for this? Water fluoridation. Community-wide fluoridation of drinking water without informed consent has been happening across the United States since World War II. It's happening in 70% of our communities. Fluoride is unprocessed toxic waste. The EPA has been telling us all along it's safe and good for you. Last year, there was a substantial federal court ruling for a case that had been in the courts for years where, and this quote comes from a report that the EPA had done some time ago, and this came out in the court hearing to the public for the first time. This is the quote. There is substantial and scientifically credible evidence establishing that fluoride poses a risk to human health. It is associated with a reduction in the IQ of children and is hazardous at dosages that are far too close to fluoride levels in the drinking water of the United States. And that risk is unreasonable. Came out in a court case last year, fall of 2024. So now they're finally admitting that fluoride is not safe and it's not good for you. We do see communities across the country that are now deciding not to fluoridate their water. And to be fair, a lot of counties in Nevada do not do it. Yes?
What about dental fluoride?
I would argue that the difference is that you're not swallowing it, first of all, as an adult. I personally, we don't use fluoride in our home, and we haven't since I went down this 10 years ago. But again, if you're swishing with it and spitting it out, I think that's a difference.
Well, dentists apply that when you have your exam. They say, do you want a fluoride treatment on your teeth?
And my answer is no, thank you. No, thank you. And there are, the latest, since this court ruling came out last year, there are a lot of toothpaste manufacturers, a lot of mouthwash manufacturers that are moving away from fluoride now. So you can easily find the products. It was a little harder 10 years ago, but it's pretty common. And my dentist and my family's dentist, my kid has a different dentist, they haven't questioned at all when I've said no, thank you. Yes?
And also remember that fluoride in your water, when you're taking your shower, what's the largest organ of your body is your skin. It is absorbed through your skin. And think of little babies, newborn babies that have a bath with bath water. Think of how much they're having absorbed into their bodies because they take a bath.
Thank you, yes. And I will say it is a toxic byproduct from the fertilizer industry primarily that they would have had to get rid of in a very expensive manner when you think of toxic waste, right? So they just diverted this into the drinking water at the time. Yes, sir.
That's what I was just gonna say is it's not even the mineral fluoride that they put in your water. It's fluorosilicic acid, which is a hazardous chemical.
Thank you. Yes. I'm going to move on to gain of function biological research. Anyone who doesn't know what that is after the last 5 years, it's where the scientists will alter viruses, bacteria, and other pathogens in labs to change their biological functions. It's playing God, right, in a lab. They play around with increasing transmissibility and virulence. The work is incredibly dangerous and at various times has been banned by the U.S. government, but it just keeps coming back somehow. Evidence does seem to point in the direction that the COVID-19, the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic was a lab leak, likely a lab leak. GMO mosquito releases. Anybody in the room heard about this one? All right, there's a company called Oxitec that genetically modifies mosquitoes in a lab, claiming that they're experimenting to get rid of diseases like dengue, Zika, and yellow fever with these GMO mosquitoes. In 2022, they got a permit from our federal EPA to release millions of these GMO mosquitoes in Fresno, California. It's right on the other side of the mountains from us here, just right over there. The company ended up withdrawing that application for that release after a whole lot of people heard about it and loudly and publicly complained and raised concerns about the potential environmental and public health risks and the lack of comprehensive risk assessments. So that release did not happen, but we know that they've happened in other areas in the United States and abroad. Mosquito abatement projects or programs. In my county, an hour south of here, they have a robust mosquito abatement program that uses fogging trucks, fixed wing aircraft, helicopters, and even a specialized drone that they just bought last year to spray adulticides and larvicides throughout the county. The chemicals that they use, and I looked it up in preparation for this again, there's 16 different chemical products that they use, and they do not have pretty profiles. So none of those chemicals have been properly evaluated for safety, yet the information that the vector control and that division puts out to the public on their website completely minimizes the risk to human health. Did we vote on whether we wanted this? Did we get informed consent? No, they're just doing it. Wildlife vaccination and sterilization programs. The USDA has begun dropping edible rabies baits from airplanes and helicopters. They claim that this experimental program targets raccoons, coyotes, and foxes, but how much other wildlife is out there? What about us? What about our pets? They warn that you should avoid contact with that bait because humans can get rabies from this live virus bait. But in the same paragraph on the manufacturer's own website, it states that the vaccine baits are safe for humans and pets. Which is it? Geoengineering and chemical weather modification includes experiments like the Northern Nevada Desert Research Institute's cloud seeding program, which as far as I know has been around since the 80s. They spray silver iodide particles and other chemicals and heavy metals into the air above our heads right over here along this mountain range. The stuff lands on us, our kids, our pets, our livestock, our yards, our gardens. We don't know if it's safe, and they don't know if it's safe, and we don't know what effect it has on biological life forms. People that are collecting and testing rainwater are reporting really high, alarmingly high levels of pollutants. On the one hand, the government tells us this isn't happening and we're imagining it. And on the other hand, the Nevada legislature passes a bill to fund the Desert Research Institute with our tax dollars. So which is it? Is it happening or is it not? Factory made and processed foods. I'm almost done. Gluten intolerance, or is it poisoning from the chemicals that they're spraying on the crops? ADHD in kids, or is it poisoning from the chemical additives in our food? Milk, meat, cheese, all being made in a lab instead of from Mother Nature now. There's a new preservative called Apeel, A-P-E-E-L, that is applied to the skin of fruits and vegetables to lengthen their shelf life. It can sit longer in the grocery store. You can't find out what is in it because that's proprietary information. Yet the FDA approved it for use on our produce, and they don't even require that organic fruits and vegetables be labeled to indicate that it has it on it. Organic foods are testing really high with chemical contents and heavy metals, and they are even testing for some pesticides that have been illegal in our country for years. Organic foods are being tested, and in fact, I just watched an episode of my favorite weekly streaming program called The High Wire with Del Bigtree, and he had a gal, Zen Honeycutt, on this week who is with moms across America, and they've been fighting for better food in our country and to combat all of this. It was really educational. I watched it last night. She had a lot of stats and a lot of information when it comes to the contamination of our food supply, and in particular the organic side of that. So now, fortunately, the FDA does have ingredient labeling requirements, and it helps the consumer make more educated decisions, but it doesn't help when it comes to contamination, such as what I've mentioned. Yes, sir.
Did I hear too that the appeal doesn't wash off when you wash your
Correct.
food?
Correct. It's like a wax. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have a question of what you were talking about before. When they're spraying the silver iodide nanoparticles in the air, is it obvious, like it was obvious for them spraying the other particles where it makes a, you know, where you can see it.
You know, how many of you live here in northern Nevada or here in the Reno area? So Nancy, I personally, and I can't, this is just my opinion and my theory, I can't prove it, but we have what I call a demon cloud that comes from the same place along those mountains, and it will come and spread out across the valley that Nancy and I live in, and it will hang for days. I think that the demon cloud has something to do with Desert Research Institute, but I can't prove it. I don't know. But I think so. And testing the soil, testing the water, that's where people are really able to see it.
Okay, like out east, they're spraying aluminum oxide, strontium oxide.
From the airplane
barium
chemtrails?
oxide,
Yeah.
And it's just this white.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
white matter because it draws, you
Yeah.
know, it's kind of red. But the silver iodide, I don't know if you would see that or not.
Yeah, I don't know. For sure. Has anybody noticed how clear and blue our skies have been since the government shut down? And it seems to be pretty universal. It's not just here, but the days here have been glorious. And our last storm just the other day was the way they used to be. I've lived in the Tahoe area since 1990. This last storm was like we used to get storms. The last few years have not felt the same. So that's just my feeling. But I want to stress to you all that all of this information is not to paint a gloom and doom scenario. I hope you understand that we have the power to take back control and to make changes to the system. Knowledge is power, right? Take back control of our health and our future. The MAHA movement, which is Make America Healthy Again, was born out of the medical freedom movement. And I'm encouraged by not only the fact that this mindset is becoming mainstream, but by the commitments of many of our current leaders to making Americans healthy again. And although government policy is critical, you, the individually, ultimately hold the power over your own health, your own body, bodily autonomy, and informed consent. Don't give those rights away. Own those rights. Ask questions, become informed, become your own advocate, and most important of all, teach your kids and grandkids to do the same because their lives and their health depend on it. That's all I have, and I don't know if we have time for questions or not at this point.
We don't.
Okay.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay,
Thank you very much. I'm hoping to sit down for dinner with us too.
I'm going
but-
to stay for lunch and then I have to get back.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I have a question, please.
Okay, so Kat's going to stay with us for a little while for lunch, things like that. So if you have questions, we're going to be breaking for lunch very soon, and we'll be able to keep asking questions of our speakers here.
Picture of that demon cloud.
I have some on my phone. Yeah.
All right. So what she said at the very end is very important. She hoped she didn't spread a doom and gloom. However, this is a reality. There's things that are coming up that we need to be aware of, we need to look into, we need to have answers for. Why? Because there's a lot of people out there who've been sticking their head in the sand that are going to suddenly become very aware of some things as things get ugly here. We need to be able to have the answers for them. We need to be able to step up in our community and give here's how you correct the situation. So as of right now, you can start doing things to protect yourself. You can start informing others on ways they can protect themselves. But we need to be considering the answers for when things really go south, because it's moving that direction very quickly in a lot of fronts. So you're hearing from a lot of great speakers, getting a lot of great information. Again, make sure you're writing down those notes. What are the steps you need to take when you leave here? Don't leave here with all these terrible things are going on and hopefully somebody fixes it. Find some steps that you can take. Find some steps you encourage others to take as well. We're going to be breaking for lunch in about 10 minutes. We're going to have Mr. Gillie come back up and run through the quiz real quick. What is that called? Auction.
Grade your own honesty policy. Let's go through them one at a
Hang on,
time.
hang
Can
on,
I have a copy
hang on.
of the quiz?
The auction in the back. Make sure if you want anything, you get in there quick because at lunchtime we're going to be
Where am I?
naming the winners of that. So if you were waiting till the last minute, it is the last minute. What did you need?
My reading glasses. All right, I'm going to have to try to read this. Okay, we're going to go really quickly. Listen carefully because I deliberately made some of these, I made them all difficult questions. I may have said true or false, and half of it's true and the other half's false, okay? Because I want to use this as a tool for us to discover what we know that ain't right and why it ain't right. Okay, let's go through it. And like he said, if you want, go home and think about solutions. I didn't get to the last several slides that go into detail how to help your county council and your state legislature. There are more of those. If you ask Justin for the PowerPoint, you can go through those at home and call me or email me. So, okay.
Do an online Zoom with us? 'Cause, like,
Oh, absolutely.
for the rest of it.
Absolutely. I can do that. I can do we can schedule an online Zoom and go in greater detail on all these questions, okay? Okay. First question is true or false? I'm sorry, I don't have my reading glasses, so I have to hold it out. The Constitution of the United States establishes a gold standard. That's question one. True or false? Okay, we got both answers. The answer is false. Now, but it's one of those trick questions. Okay? The Constitution makes gold and silver coin the only coin of the United States, and the Constitution authorizes Congress to coin money and regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and Congress has done that, and it's gold and silver coin. So the real answer to this is, what do you mean by gold standard? And there may be 4 or 5 different things that people think they understand under that term in their mind, and each of those might be 30%, 60% correct. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so give yourself a point on that if you got it wrong or right. Number 2, true or false?
If you got it wrong or right, you get a point.
Oh, no, accordingly. It is false, and if you said true, don't give yourself a point. I'm sorry, that's what I meant. That's what I meant, okay? The Constitution creates a silver dollar standard and authorizes Congress to make gold and silver coins, and disallows disallows the state to make legal tender laws, for anything but gold and silver coin, but it nowhere says gold is the standard. In fact, the same evil people who gave us the Federal Reserve were working as early as the 1800s to destroy the silver standard and replace it with the gold standard as an intermediate step to replacing that with Federal Reserve notes. Okay. But gold is godly, gold is wonderful, okay, but it's not, gold is measured in our country against the silver dollar, okay. 2, true or false, the Constitution permits the Treasury of the United States to issue circulating notes, but only redeemable in gold or silver. False. Why is that false? You're right.
Because they're not authorized to do that.
Congress is not allowed to issue circulating notes. A circulating note is a bill of tender. We considered, under the Articles of Confederation, we had that power, Congress had that power. We considered it and debated it, and only a couple of people were for it, and everybody else was, hell no. And that's why we did not give Congress the power to emit bills of tender or circulating notes. Okay. 3, true or false, by granting Congress the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States, we, the people in our Constitution, have empowered Congress to authorize loans and to authorize the Treasury of the United States to actually borrow the money and to issue bonds as evidence of this debt. True or false? Absolutely true. Absolutely true. A bond is not the same as a bill of credit. And that's, remember, one of our things was, what's the difference between a security and a bond? Is not intended to be circulated from hand to hand, is not made payable to bearer. Okay, there are several differences. Again, these are terms of art with very specific means. A circulating note is that's meant to circulate as money. Private individuals are free to issue as many as they want and free to go to jail if they do so fraudulently, but neither the states nor the general government is permitted to issue circulating notes. But they are empowered to issue bonds, which is evidence of that debt. And if you counterfeit that, we can put you in jail. That's a bond or security or evidence of that debt. So that one was true. 4.
On the bonds, though, the Constitution requires those to be paid in gold and silver, which is not happening.
Yeah, that's another thing. If they pay you that, remember we said Congress does not have power, or general government doesn't have power to borrow money and not pay it back. So good point. So if you did the wrong answer for that reason, give yourself at least a fourth of a point, because you're right. You repay it in real money. Okay. Very good. Very good. Are we on 5 or 4? What is meant by our Constitution's grant of power to regulate the value of money? I hope everyone understands that now, because I know you all, and including me, understood it wrong before. What is meant by that? What is meant when we give Congress power to regulate the value of money? I can repeat it again right now if I need to.
In terms of foreign denominations.
No, it's both. It's both our coin and foreign coin. It means, and it's meant this for hundreds of years going back to England. The kings and queens used to regulate the value, and then beginning with the English Civil War, Parliament said, that's a legislative power, and in America we made it adamantly a legislative power. It is to establish a standard and to regulate what you, the government, will accept in payment in other coins against it, and what will be accepted in payment of judgments in court. What's that?
What's the answer?
So the answer is to regulate the value, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, means to declare in law how many of this coin will be accepted against the standard, which is a U.S. constitutional silver dollar. So we have laws that say a gold eagle is worth 50 of these, or a Swedish krona is that is to regulate the value, okay, of both our coin and other people's coin. It means to say at law, at our customs house, at our treasury, this many of this coin will be accepted against a constitutional silver dollar, which is the standard. And in court judgments, if the court judgment is for $50 and you want to pay in some other coin, well, this is the ratio of exchange. That's what that means. Okay, where are we?
Number 5.
5, true or false? By our Constitution, we have authorized the Congress to emit only dollars.
False.
False. We have authorized Congress to coin money, and it has coined dollars, but also gold eagles and other coins from the very beginning, and that's perfectly legit. Okay? Next one is which one? 6. True or false? By our Constitution, we have ordained that the Treasury of the United States, in collecting duties and imposts on goods imported from abroad for sale in the United States, may receive of such duties, payment of such duties and imposts solely in dollars. Consequently, foreign importers are obliged by law to obtain dollars to pay these. False. From the very beginning, they've brought what they had, and if we had regulated the value of that coin, we accept it, then we just computed the ratio that we had decreed. Okay? And that's what we should be doing today. Okay, true or false? By our Constitution, we have empowered Congress alone to issue money and adjust what it will buy. False, because the second half is false, right? Right, it's one of those trick questions. Congress alone has the power to issue money, but not to say what it will buy, but what one coin will be accepted against another coin. What's the next one, 8? 7, where are we?
8.
The Constitution permits Congress to issue only money backed by gold or silver. False, because the Constitution does not allow the United States to issue any note of any kind, only real money, okay? Real coins, okay? True or false? By granting Congress the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States, we, the people in our Constitution, have empowered Congress to authorize loans and to authorize the Treasury of the United States to issue Treasury notes to pay back those loans.
True.
False. Okay, false. A Treasury note is a bill of tender. It's not allowed. A bond is permitted. That's merely an evidence of debt. But if it's issuing a bill of tender, that's what a Treasury note is, promising to pay you something and circulate from hand to hand to bearer, that's a bill of tender, not allowed. Okay? Name 5, are we on number 10?
Yes.
Name 5 particulars in which the Federal Reserve Act violates the Constitution of the United States. I wrote in the footnote 6 possible answers. There's a couple others. Let's hear yours. Or should I just give you 6, and if you got 5 of those right, you give it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, here are 6 that are legit answers. The Federal Reserve Act charters a corporation, not allowed to the general government. invest that corporation with government powers, not allowed by our Constitution. Ordain that the president should nominate and, upon Senate confirmation, appoint and commission some of that corporation's officers. Again, not allowed, but that's what we do. 4, ordain that others of this corporation's officers, though not constitutionally appointed officers of the United States, may nevertheless exercise legislative and executive powers of a governmental nature over persons in the United States. That's what our Federal Reserve System did. Again, not allowed. Okay? Invest that corporation with governmental powers that are denied to the government of the United States itself. Not allowed. Some examples of that are to authorize it to issue bills of credit. Okay? Issue it to exercise law power over people's property, etc. Okay? Oftentimes when we deny our government power to do something, it creates a corporation to do that in its name. You can't do that under our Constitution. Okay? 6, give that corporation's note a wide and presumably permanent circulation, otherwise impossible under economic law, by making them obligations of the United States. So those are 6 possible ways that you could have written. If you wrote 5 of those, you get that one. You get that one right. Number 16. What does the Constitution mean in the yes?
Number 11.
Did I skip one? I'm sorry. Because I went to the footnote. I'm sorry. What powers have we, the people, by our Constitution given to Congress to protect the integrity of our money? There's only one line and one clause that gives our general government.
Gold and silver.
But what specific power have we given to our government to protect the integrity of our money?
Silver. Gold and
Okay, give yourself credit according to your judgment. What I meant by this was we allow Congress to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities of the United States and counterfeiting the current coin of the United States. There's no specifically protective power. But I can see where you're going. Give yourself partial credit for that. But I meant specifically to protect the integrity of our money. Okay? For instance, they're not allowed to put you in jail for counterfeiting Federal Reserve notes because they're not securities of the United States and they're not current coin of the United States. Okay? 12. What powers have we given Congress to protect the integrity of foreign countries' money? And the answer is the same in the same clause. No, because the current coin of the United States, means coin minted by the United States by authority of Congress and all other countries' coin which we have domesticated by regulating its value against the dollar. That's what that means. So the current coin is whatever coin that is legal tender in other countries, and here our Congress has domesticated, monetized by regulating its value against our dollar. And those other coins haven't circulated because years ago Congress quit doing that. But for much of our history, Congress said almost every coin in the world, how many of them would be accepted against dollars, and that made them the current coin. Remember, current means it's circulating in a currently in your country. Okay. Where are we? 13? What powers have we, the people, by our Constitution given to Congress to regulate the use of foreign money in the United States? And that's kind of in that same answer. We have given Congress power to regulate the value of foreign coin against our dollars so that we could, and hopefully would, use it as necessary in our country. What is a bill of credit? Everyone should know by now. What is a bill of credit? It's a note made to bearer, meant to circulate as money. Not the same as a note for, I'm going to give you this, and here's your name, and here's the date, and here's where you redeem it. A note meant to be paid to bearer and circulating as money. That's what the Constitution means by a bill of credit.
Okay, we got to wrap up and go to lunch. I don't know if
Okay,
that's enough to
I'm
give you
sorry.
the
How many
score.
did we get to?
We got to 14.
Okay, if after lunch we'll do 15 through 30, or
No, we don't have any time.
we don't have any time. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to make a command decision.
Yeah, so
And-
we can go with the 14 you got so far.
So the 14 we did so far, give yourself a grade, and then if you think you did pretty well, come up to me, and the first place winner, we're going to give you 2, second place winner, and if you got all the last ones wrong, I guess it's okay. But you can deal with me after.
You mind praying for the meal real quick?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so we're going to go to lunch. We're going to wrap up with the auction. So if you want a last bid before we go over, get that on the way out. And I've asked Mr. Gillie just to pray for the food real quick, and then we're going to head on over for that. Back here at 1 o'clock in your seats, ready to go again.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this beautiful morning, and we're grateful for the wonderful food that these people at this hotel prepare. We ask Thee to bless it for us, that it will be joy to us and it will be strengthening to us, both spiritually and physically. Bless us that we can continue to learn and associate in a useful way to Thy glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, remember, if you scored well, come see Mr. Gillie about your prize. If you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
score well, it was fun and you learned something.
And I hope you learn a lot more.
I got 11 right.
Ooh, you probably got something.
Of the 11, I actually,
Oh, 11 out of 30?
no, 11 out of 14.
You probably got.
12, the one that I missed, I disagree with what you
Okay,
said.
well, which remind me which one it was. Explain to me.
How does mine go?
Well, let's do his first. Which one was yours?
Okay, mine
And
was
read it to
on
me
the-
because I have to
On the
squint.
12. What powers was given
Oh,
to
to
Congress
protect?
to protect the integrity.
Yeah.
Now, protect the integrity
Right.
of the things.
And
not
yeah,
To
and
allow
yeah.
it to say that.
And I was using
There-
protect
there
as
is
a
no-
yeah.
you
I
know,
was
we
using
can't-
protect as active measures to protect
Well,
from someone else's attack. But I
that's-
said give yourself a third point on that one
Well,
because I can see where you're going.
okay. So
You
I
know,
got
but
11.
that clause was the only clause that specifically gives affirmative authority to protect by putting people in jail who endanger the integrity of it. That's
Yeah.
what, yeah.
But-
But that was
But and then on
a
this
fault
one
in my-
where we have the Treasury notes, all of this was correct.
Except for
And even
Treasury notes.
Treasury notes are technically what I would call Treasury bonds, but Treasury notes are
But
short
there's a
term
difference.
versus Treasury
well, and there's
bonds.
a difference because the Treasury
Nowadays.
notes, like silver, I meant by Treasury notes, like silver certificates, they're meant to be passed from bearer to bearer.
Right, and I was referring to
Oh.
the loans, the Treasury
Well,
notes.
if it's a
nowadays-
bond, if
well,
it's a
see,
bond and it's not meant
okay,
for circulation, then
if
you're
it
right.
is less than 10 years, it's a Treasury note. Under today's thing. So if
Yes,
you
but
buy
is
a
it
30-day,
made to a
it's
person or
30
made to
no.
bearer?
They have T-bills, T-notes, and T-bonds.
Yeah.
See.
So you have T notes,
Yeah.
T bills, and see a
See,
T
yes.
bill,
Yeah, see,
which is T notes are technically short term.
Yes,
T bonds
yes,
are long term.
Yes.
But they're still issued by the Treasury.
Yes, and that's
so
okay.
that's
The
what I
Treasury
was
is supposed to
referring
issue.
I
The Treasury
wasn't-
is supposed to issue
Yeah.
bonds because they're evidence of the
Right.
borrowing.
So
but they're
the
not
note-
allowed to issue bills of credit, which are meant to be circulated from
Correct.
hand to hand.
Which
yeah,
would be
yeah.
silver certificates.
Right, so
and
silver
those.
certificates,
But
those
I
are-
don't consider those in today's definition a Treasury
Oh,
note.
well then give yourself credit. That I see what you're saying.
All right.
Okay, give yourself. That was a faultiness in my writing the question then, or not anticipating her. Do you think he won?
Yeah.
Let's wait till after lunch because how many? He got 11 right.
I got
you-
9, so he's
I
got
got-
Damn, you
12.
guys are so much better than I expected
12.
anybody would do. In fact, Edwin says, David, this is really good, but you're going to discourage people because everyone's going to get them all wrong.
What?
Can we get a copy of that book in a PDF form